Did you know that 99% of businesses never reach $1 million in annual revenue, which is a real shame because it means that most business owners are staying stuck and never achieving the lifestyle or impact that they dreamed of. But all of that ends today. Well, as long as you watch this video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to join the 1% of companies who cross the 7-figure in revenue mark. And I'm going to break it down into 5 simple steps that almost any business in almost any industry can follow. And if you don't know who I am, my name's Goose. I'm the CEO and co-founder of one of Australia's fastest growing companies. We're doing roughly about $1.5 million in revenue per month. And we're doing that whilst traveling the world as digital nomads and living on tiny little tropical islands, which is pretty sweet. And the steps that I'm about to show you are the steps that we took to get to our first $1 million in revenue. And they're the steps that I'm following right now to build a $1 million side hustle. So if you want a proven blueprint for success, then stick around because you're in for a treat. Now, let's dive in. Step 1 is to pick a starving market. Picking the right industry and the right market to be in is one of the biggest indicators of success that you can look for. What you want to find is you want to find a market that is big enough, a market that is growing, and a market that is aligned with the things that you're passionate about as well. So what do I mean by that? Well, big enough needs to be big enough for you, but broadly speaking, if I look at our business, for example, Dashdot, that is in the real estate investment space. Now, real estate as a market is growing, real estate investment is growing, and it's huge. You know, real estate as an asset class is the single largest asset class in the whole world. So the potential market is absolutely enormous. Now, you might not need a globally enormous market like that, but you do want to think about what is the size of the problem that you might be able to solve and for who. If you go too niche, then you might not actually have a market big enough to be able to achieve your economic goals. For example, let's say you created a perfect product for redhead dentists living in Peru that were left-handed. You might actually find that you don't actually have many people that you could potentially sell to, and that could actually be a problem. You want to find a market that is going to be big enough to be economically viable. You want a market that is growing, not declining, because a rising tide lifts all ships. And again, it's got to be something that you're actually interested in. Now, you don't necessarily need to follow your passion. It's okay to have passions that aren't your main economic engine, but you do have to be passionate enough about it to be able to be curious and relentless on the path to success. So you'd have to pick something that you've at least got an interest in or can develop an interest in. And not only that, there needs to be a clear gap in the market. Now, a gap in the market doesn't mean necessarily inventing something completely brand new. You don't need to go and try and create the iPhone. You can actually just find a market that is underserved, and that is just as useful. Finding a market that doesn't have what it needs. So what I like to think about in this analogy and thinking about a starving market is imagine a man walking out of the desert, he's dying of thirst, and you come across him. How much would he pay for a glass of water? He's about to die of thirst. He would probably pay everything that he's got. He would offer you his house and everything he possibly had to stay alive. But let's say you gave him 100 glasses of water. How much would he pay for the 101st? Probably not as much. And so this is a really great example of thinking about market demand. It doesn't mean there might not be any competition in the market you're going into, but there needs to be more demand than there is supply in order for you to be able to get traction quickly. And a good little framework to think about here is to just choose one product in one market that solves one problem. So what you're trying to identify here is who am I going to serve? Macro, right? You don't want to get down into the detail. You want to go, who am I going to serve? Why am I going to serve them? Do these kind of things come together? So I'll use Dashdot as an example. When we started out, we saw a very specific problem in the real estate market for property investors. And the reason we discovered that problem is because we discovered the problem ourselves. We bought the wrong property in the wrong place at the wrong time and lost a bunch of money. And then we thought, hang on a second, this isn't how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to invest in real estate and become financially successful, yet we had made a big mistake. That led us on a path to try and work out how to avoid making those mistakes. And then once we'd done that, we sort of went, wow, imagine how many other people might be in the same position that we were in trying to solve the same problem. Imagine if we could help some of them. And so in this example, the real estate industry is big. The property investment industry and interest is growing. So it's a growing market. Plus property investors specifically was something that we were passionate about because we were trying to be property investors and trying to become successful in that area as well. And we realized there was a big gap for people that needed help to try and avoid mistakes and to find success. So the next step is to shift your mindset. Now at this stage, you've kind of worked out what you want to focus on. In our case, it was real estate and investors. In your case, it could be something completely different. It doesn't matter as long as you've picked something that you're going to focus on. And from here, you do need to shift your mindset. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've probably seen heaps of videos where it's like, mindset is the key to success. Dream it and you can achieve it. And that is all kind of true. And I've got videos on manifestation and all of that kind of stuff. But in this video, I want to be very, very specific about what I mean that you need to shift in your mindset to become successful on your path to $1 million. The first thing you need to shift is your belief. Because if you've never achieved $1 million in a year, that is going to seem like this really big out of reach goal. And it's going to be hard to imagine what that's like. And so what do you need in order to have a $1 million revenue business? Well, you need to make $83,333 every month for 12 months. And again, if you've you've never achieved that kind of money before, $83,000 in a month, you might be looking at that going, I can't even imagine how I can get to that point. So what you need to look for is proof. What you want to do is you want to find someone who's done what you have done before, either in the same industry or an adjacent industry. It doesn't matter. What you're looking for is evidence to show that somebody just like you went from somewhere similar to where you are to where they are today, and they've passed through this, because that's going to give you the understanding that it can be done. This is effectively breaking the 4-minute mile for yourself. You want to be able to see that somebody else has done it. Now, if you're not familiar with the 4-minute mile concept, once upon a time, people thought it was physiologically impossible for humans to run a faster than 4-minute mile. But then, I can't remember what year it was, back in the 70s, I think it was, Roger Bannister ran a 4-minute mile. And then immediately after that, hundreds and thousands of people started doing it after him. And it was proven that it could be done. So what you want to do is you want to prove this to yourself. Find people that have done what you are trying to do, because it's easier to reference them and go, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. And you can start to build that belief. Now, once you start finding people like this and finding these kind of stories, YouTube's great for this kind of stuff. Obviously, this channel is probably pretty good for that kind of stuff too. You want to consume as much of the content as possible because you want to normalize it. You want to become completely normalized to the idea of creating $80,000, $100,000, $200,000 months to the degree that you know that it is only a matter of time. Because it is fear and doubt that is going to get in your way of your success. And you're going to actually self-sabotage if you don't normalize the fact that you not only deserve it, but are completely capable of achieving it. And in fact, I want to give you an example of how I've done this as well in our journey. Now, this wasn't specifically in the journey to $1 million, but as we started to grow our team, and I started freaking out. I think we had like 5 or 6 or 8 team members at this point, and we were about to hire some more, and I was freaking out. I was like, man, we're growing so fast and we're building this team. And so what I did is I sought proof. I sought evidence of somebody who'd done something like this before. So I started looking at really big companies. I actually looked at the Disney company, which at that time had 293,000 employees and had been around for 100 years. Now, obviously this maths doesn't stack out, but I basically said 293,000 employees divided by 100 years. That means if all of the employees stayed forever and somehow magically could all exist at the same time, they hired 2,930 people every single year for 100 years. And I was concerned about hiring, say, 3 or 4 or 5. And that really put it in context for me to understand that I can think bigger, and people have done this successfully before. So look to stack evidence, even if you don't have it of your own, borrow the evidence from somebody else so that you know that it is possible. And another thing you want to do at this stage is you want to start chunking down, because $1 million can seem out of reach. So what you want to do is you want to break that down and go, okay, what would need to be achieved on a per week, per month, per day basis, so that you can start to chunk it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. Because as the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bite at a time. And this is the same with this goal here too. You want to break it down into simple bite-sized chunks so you know what actions you need to take every day. That might be how many phone calls you need to make, how many subscribers you need to get, how many video views you need to get, any of these kind of things that you can break it down into simple lead and lag indicators so that you can know that you're on the path without just looking at the big number, macro number, and hoping that you're going to get there. By breaking it down into simple, achievable steps, it's going to make it far more likely that you're going to achieve your goal. The second mindset shift that you need to do is to kill the artist. Now, where a lot of people go wrong, particularly in service-based businesses, is they get stuck on this idea that they are some kind of an artist. They might be a great financial planner or a great mortgage broker or a great builder. And they get this idea that it is the greatness of them at their craft which is going to drive the business, but that is actually what is going to drive their failure. Because when you want to shift to growth, when you actually want to create financial outcomes, you actually need to shift to the mindset of being a sales machine. Now, the craft that you've developed, the skills that you've developed, the product or service that you've got to sell on the back end is fantastic, but that should serve the function of sales, not the other way around, which is a specific mindset shift. Because if you are in a business and you think, all right, I'm just going to become as good as possible at my craft over here, and if I'm just really great at this, then sales will magically come to me. Well, then you are living in a fantasy land. Imagine 2 bakeries. One baker is the world's best croissant maker, but he's got no idea how to market and sell. The other baker has absolutely totally fine croissants. They're at least as good as the standard, but possibly just a little bit better, but nowhere near the world-class guy. But this baker is a world-class at marketing and sales. Who do you think is going to be more financially successful? Well, the second one's going to have a line up and down the street, while the first one is going to go broke just being an artist. Now, this is a big problem that I see, particularly in the early stages of business, because business owners get so caught up in this idea of their craft that they forget that the main function is sales. So when you're in this stage of business, you want to think like a sales machine. The product or service is there to serve your ability to sell, not the other way around. This shift and this focus is actually going to drive you to the next level. And to give you some context around this, in the early stages of your business, when you're getting to $1 million, you probably want to be spending 60% or more of your time focused on revenue generating activities, whether that be marketing or sales. You want to be getting attention. You want to be converting that attention into your products. Only when you do that will you have enough money to be able to start to build out the team and then continue to improve the products. Now, just to be clear, we're going to talk about this in a minute. I am an advocate advocate for having an exceptionally high quality product. So don't misunderstand this in some idea of just like sell garbage. But you need to have a good product, but you need to actually specifically shift your mindset to sales and marketing on the front end to drive the economic engine. Otherwise, you will get nowhere. Which leads us on to step 3, building or borrowing an audience. Now, when you're getting started, the most important thing you can do is to get attention. Now, there are plenty of ways to get attention. You might post on social media, or you might decide to join a Facebook group. And the idea here is you want to find your people. And the easiest way to do this at the start is to find somebody else who's already found your people. And the way that you can do that is, for example, Facebook groups are a really good starting point. If you find somewhere where the community of the types of individuals you've got are gathered, go into those communities and provide value. Don't just start pitching at people. Actually go in there and start to add value. And it is through that that people will start to gravitate towards you. Now, the problem when you're starting out is that it takes time to build an audience, which is why I specifically said borrow an audience. It's easy to say, hey, yeah, just, post videos on YouTube and then your YouTube channel will grow and then you'll be able to make heaps of money. But if you look at most of the successful YouTube creators, it takes years. Now, what we're talking about in this video is how do you get to $1 million in the first year? You don't have time to sit around and just like make videos for a couple of years till you eventually get traction. So how do you get going? Well, as I mentioned, the best way to do it is to try and borrow other people's audiences. Work out where the eyeballs already are and go there. It is from there when you add value that people will start to go, okay, this person seems to have something interesting going on. I'm going to start paying attention to them too. And then you can start to arbitrage the attention over to your own stuff. And back when Gabby and I were first getting started in Dashdot, that's exactly what we were doing too. We were posting organic content every day on Facebook, actively participating in conversations, trying to build up that attention and to get those eyeballs. Now, there are effectively 2 different ways you can do it. You can either do it organic or you can do it paid. Organic is what most people probably know, posting on social media, commenting, messaging, doing all of this kind of stuff. There's no paid background to it. The other side of the coin though is paid. Now, paid doesn't just mean ads. It could also be paying for shout outs or paying for collaborations, because again, what you want to do is you want to borrow somebody else's audience. You could even pay to be able to advertise in somebody else's email list, which is in fact what I want to talk about next. Because as I mentioned at the start of this video, I'm sharing these tips because these are the things that we did to get to our first $1 million and the thing that I'm doing right now to build $1 million side hustle. And in my opinion, the single best way to build an audience is to build an email list. Now, that is easier said than done, particularly if you have absolutely no traction. So the best way to do it is to actually use paid ads or use paid mediums to generate traffic for your email list. So with Dashdot, we had a lead magnet, which we would run ads to the lead magnet. People would opt in for the lead magnet and end up in our email list. And then we'd send them emails, like roughly an email every 2 days. So we did that. We just had this huge long email sequence. Most of our sales came from our email list. In fact, to this day, 90% of our sales come from inside our email list. So we're spending roughly $30,000 to $50,000 a week on ads. And most of those people end up in our email list. And from the email list, they end up engaging from there. So I can't advocate enough for the value of an email list. And it takes time to build, but it's one of the best assets you're going to build. Now, as I mentioned, we're building a side hustle at the moment. And that right now is the thing that we did. We started a newsletter, and just in the last 3 weeks, we've gotten over 10,000 subscribers. Now, the point of creating a newsletter is to provide a place that is off platform where you have aggregated eyeballs that is your audience that you can add value to in a very specific way without the distractions of the rest of the internet. It is an awesome way to build relationships, to build trust, and to build longevity. And in fact, email has one of the highest conversion rates of any activity that you can possibly do. I see a lot of small business owners sleeping on this. It doesn't mean you need to go start a newsletter, but you should be doing something to be getting people into your email system and then to add value to them. It doesn't mean pitch them by email once a week. It actually means continuously provide information to solve their problems. It's a content marketing play. And I see so many businesses that are sub $2 million who haven't even touched the sides of this, and they're wondering why they don't have an automatic selling machine. It is the single best way to get the most reliable outcomes in your sales mechanism is to have a strong email list. Okay, so you're getting some eyeballs now, you're building your email list, you're starting to get some audience around you. You're getting either followers, subscribers, anything like that where you have got an audience. This is the most important thing, because without an audience, without somebody to present an offer to, you ain't going to get anywhere. In order to present an offer, you need to, step 4, build an irresistible offer. So what does building an irresistible offer mean? Well, effectively, you want to have something that's so good that it's hard for people to say no to. Now, that means that you actually do have to have a great service or product, because if you start selling things to people and it doesn't do what you said it would do, you're going to end up with a lot of unhappy customers and you're going to suffer massive reputational damage, which is really hard to come back from. So you have to have a good product or service. That's the baseline. You cannot rip people off. But here's the thing. When you're representing whatever that thing is, whatever that product or service is, you want to aim to have 5x to 10x the value of the product versus the price. So that means if you're selling something for $1,000, you want to be able to show the buyer that they are going to get at least $5,000 worth of value from that, or $10,000 or even more. Now, 10x is a great metric to aim for, and it depends on the ticket size of your product. 10x the value of the price is actually probably one of the best sweet spots to aim for. And it's got to be real value. It can't just be like made up fake value that you see in a lot of these kind of like marketing funnel stacks. You actually want to be able to point to it and say, that is worth that much and you're getting this for this price. This is going to help to build up a stack of evidence in the buyer's mind where they're like, wow, this is almost a no-brainer. I'm spending $1,000 and I'm getting $10,000 worth of real value. And if you can do that, you're going to find your conversion rates are going to be very, very high. And when you're presenting the offer, you've also got to help them to understand what's in it for them. It's not about you, it's about them. So you want to be selling the benefits, not the features. You want to be helping them to understand what transformational outcome is going to happen by them choosing your product or service. And specifically, why should they choose you versus anyone else? Now, hopefully you've chosen a starving market, so there's not a lot of other people that you're being compared to. That being said, you want them to be able to look at you and go, okay, I understand your value proposition. I understand what I'm going to get for my money. And this seems like a deal that's almost too good to be true. In fact, with Dashdot, for quite a significant portion of the time that we've been in business, we've actually faced a really big problem that people think that what we do is too good to be true, which is kind of a good position to be in, but trying to prove to people that something is true when it already is true is actually a little bit harder than you think because you're already providing all of the evidence. But anyway, that's a good problem to have and you want to aim for that. And if you can do that, if you can show how you can provide transformational value well and truly above whatever the price of the product or service is, that means you're entering into the territory of value-based pricing, which is the best place to be. You don't want to be pricing on a per unit or a per hour basis because effectively you're just creating a job. What you want to do is you want to price on outcomes, which is again why you need to be able to show the value and the benefit that you're going to be giving to your consumer. And then you've got to make sure the offer aligns with your audience and also your skills. As a general rule, if you have a lower priced item, you're going to need to sell a higher volume, particularly in order to get to $1 million. If you have a higher ticket product or service, you can sell less of them. However, depending on the market you've chosen, it may not be appropriate to have a high ticket service. If your market is 17-year-olds, having a product or service that's worth $100,000, sure, maybe you only need to sell 10 of them, but finding 10 17-year-olds who are going to spend $100,000 on anything is going to be pretty tough. So depending on your audience, you actually need to price accordingly. Now, it is a good idea to always aim for more premium pricing and not get stuck trying to price it as cheaply as possible. But again, it needs to be applicable to your audience and your skills, because if you don't have any selling skills, then it can actually be pretty hard to get started. Now, transparently, when we started Dashdot, I didn't have any skills in sales or marketing. I'd never done it before, and I had to learn. And our ticket price is quite high, but again, we were able to provide a tremendous amount of value in a market that was already positioned to be able to pay a high ticket price. And so in order to find where this sweet spot is, you need to think about where is your audience? How have you got them? Is it followers on Instagram? Is it people in your email list? What is the market? What is the problem that you are solving? How big is the problem? Can you create transformational value that is ideally 10x the price that you're offering? And what is the best selling mechanism? Now, going back and just kind of wrapping some numbers around this is going to help you to think about how big your audience needs to be again. Because if you're selling a low ticket product, you're going to need a bigger audience so that you can sell more units of the product. Let's say you've got an email list of 20,000 subscribers, which would be pretty good. And let's say you've got an average conversion rate from email to purchase of 1%. Now, it could be higher than that, but I'm just using this for simple maths. That would mean that you'd have 200 buyers. Now, if your goal was $85,000 a month so that you could pass the $1 million threshold, you would need to sell 200 units at $425 of whatever it is that you're selling. Now, that's 200 sales that you've got to make every single month. And if you've got a machine to do that, then awesome. Now, using a different example, let's say you had a much smaller audience. You only had 5,000 people in your audience. If you priced your product a little bit higher and had the same conversion rate, you would actually be able to sell less units and still be just as effective. So 5,000 subscribers times a 1% conversion rate would be 50. And if you still wanted to hit the $85,000 a month mark, you would only need to sell 50 units of whatever it is you're selling at $1,700, which is again, totally achievable. On the one hand, you might have a larger audience and a lower ticket and a cheaper product to achieve your outcome, or you could have a smaller audience and a higher ticket and a higher price per product in order to achieve the same outcome. So thinking through these kind of things is actually going to be really, really useful in order to understand how to best position your offer. And so once you've got this going, you've built an audience, and hopefully you've got a reliable way to continue to build your audience, and you've got a reliable sales mechanism that's converting that audience into buyers. Then what you want to do is you want to create a flywheel, because it's one thing to get to $1 million. It's another thing to stay there and to continue to grow. And there are two things that you should do in order to create a flywheel, to create an automatic selling machine that is just powering you to all of the success that you ever desire. And number one is selling through the customer. So if you've created a great service that provides transformational value that people are like, holy smokes, I can't believe I got this for this price and it really did the thing that they said it was going to do. What you want to do is you want to collect results. You want to collect case studies. You want to collect testimonials. Nothing converts better than social proof. If you can show potential buyers that other people just like them have achieved the results that they want, just in the same way that you at the start were seeking proof that somebody else had gotten to $1 million so that you could say, if they can do it, I can do it. You want to do the same thing for your customers. You want to show them, hey, here's a story of Johnny. Johnny's just like you. Johnny was in the same position. He went from here to here and now he's really successful. He got everything that he wanted out of this product. And if you're like Johnny, which you are, it's likely that you're going to get similar results as well. So selling through your customer and collecting that proof and that evidence is essential, which you can't do if your product or service sucks. So you have to make sure that you are providing great outcomes. If you don't do that, everything else is a waste of time. Just skip it. But if you are doing that, make sure you're taking the time to document it. Find out how people feel about their results. Get testimonials. Document the evidence to show the transformation you've helped them achieve, and then use that, push that all to the front end to show potential customers everything that can happen once they pass the door. And the second thing to do to create a flywheel is to reinvest back at the start. Whatever your audience building mechanism is, whether it be paid ads to build an email list, whether it be content, whether it be paid shout outs, whatever it is, start doubling down on what's working. Take the money you're making, fold it back on itself, put it back into the top of the machine so it starts to churn more customers through who are going to then achieve great results that you can then push their results back out to the front, and it creates a flywheel. Doing that starts to send you exponential, and that's how you get from 1 million to 5 million and to 10 million. It is that simple. So just to recap on the 5 steps. Step 1, pick a starving market. Step 2, shift your mindset. Step 3, build or borrow an audience. Step 4, build an irresistible offer. And step 5, create a flywheel. Now these 5 steps apply in basically any industry, so I'm confident it's going to work for you. We've used this in the real estate investment space, and now we're using it to build our newsletter, and then we're going to be building a community off the back of that. If you want to subscribe to the newsletter to watch what we're doing and you can experience it too, then just check out the link in the description. And if you follow these 5 steps, it is really, really simple to get to your goal, particularly if you chunk it down. And just remember, there are tons of people just like you who have achieved not only the success that you're looking for, but far more than that. Now, if you found this video useful, then let me know in the comments, and of course, share this with somebody that you care about if you want to help them to get to $1 million in 5 steps fast as well. And of course, make sure you subscribe to my newsletter so you can see how we are growing a $1 million side hustle right now. And until next time, stay awesome, stay powerful.